And welcome to day 4. It's Janet Bartoli, and I'm today going to be talking to you about the SEO case study. Sort of like the pros, mostly the pros, because there really aren't any cons to it, but just sort of like what should an SEO case study actually include, and what should you make sure that you do when you're presenting a case study, and even more importantly, the process that goes along with creating one. Because you really, no matter whether you're working in an agency or whether you're working as an independent consultant or especially even in-house, you really want to be able to have your own case studies. So let's just dive right into that. So here we are, day 4. Now, why bother having a case study at all? And so there's many reasons why you should develop your own set of case studies. I remember a number of years back when I would work in an agency and I was sort of asked, always along the way, hey, do you have any case studies? And it's really to help the business development team so that when they're talking about selling SEO or selling any one of their digital marketing activities, it's always great to say, here's what we did. We took this client, we worked with them for this period of time. This is the result they got. Um, Especially when you're in a situation where if it's a request for information or a request for proposal, there are many times where you're going to be competing with other agencies or other consultancies that will supply their own case studies. So get in the habit, if you're not already, and just start doing that. Now, if you're in-house and you're an SEO, that you might be thinking, well, there is no business development because I have my 9 to 5 here and I've got a job and I don't need to really produce that. But it's really a good thing to do because one, for end of year review, you have your case studies. Your client really is your employer and so your boss, and you're going for your end of year review and you say, well, here's the situation, this is what actually happened, and it will really help set you up for promotion because you're basically sharing all of your performance work, and it can be in the form of a case study. It doesn't, you can call it whatever you want, but it would be a good thing to have. Also, in the event that you're interested in looking for new work, again, with your resume, it's also nice to have some case studies, things that you developed as an SEO, whether you were in-house or you worked for somebody else somewhere. It's always a good thing to have. So many real good reasons why you should have your own case studies. They are a great way to learn things in a practical manner. And so one of the best ways is you're demonstrating knowledge with your actual examples and your results. You're demonstrating your subject matter expertise. You're showing whether it's a client or a future employer or someone that is interested in your expertise. You're demonstrating to them the work that was involved and the outcome of the benefit. So this is something. This is when you're going on an interview in particular. You don't want to sit at the interview and say, well, I'm an awesome SEO because I can get any keyword ranked on the first page. Like that really did well in 2004. It really holds no water anymore. So don't think that your awesomeness can carry over by just saying, that you can get #1 rankings. Now, here's a tip. Document your work and your process along the way. One of the things that I mentioned just before, one of the things you really want to make sure that you consider every single time is you're constantly taking note of what it is you're doing. If you're in an agency and you start working with a client, start documenting what's actually happening, why they are working with you guys right now, because of what specific challenge. So you can start sort of roughing out a framework of what the case study should look like. And then you're sort of baselining what actually, when you start that project, what's their traffic like? What's the conversions like? Are they getting any organic sales from, any traffic converting into sales? So you start that early. And then at the end of the project, hopefully it's at least a year, if not longer, you're starting to build that case study up, and it's going to look really awesome, and something that um, again, you can share with other future clients, etc. So that's how you can kind of make sure that you're keeping consistent with making sure that you're creating regular and ongoing case studies. Every case study should have um, something really that really will be valuable. So, you know, there are certain components a case study should have. Again, you're not talking about the keywords you got ranked. Um, and really, by only specifically talking about the keywords you got ranked, you're not talking about the performance. You're just talking about, hey, I got these keywords ranked. And then you're perpetuating that SEO myth of all SEO is keyword rankings. Okay. You want to educate those that aren't familiar with SEO by helping them understand, here's the problem, this is what I did, and here was the outcome. So it's really a valuable piece of information for any prospective client or employer. What they must have is you got to describe the business challenge. So again, and I have any number of different use cases that I can pull from, and also that you should also be able to have some sort of like in your back pocket or memorized in the event you're in a conversation, and you can say if it's a prospective client or employer, you can say when it comes to migration, I've had several situations where I was in working with a client who came to me so many months after the migration, and because they didn't work with SEO early on, they were, found that their traffic was falling off a cliff month over month. They were losing massive amounts of sales. Then once, the team came in, we did these certain things, and then within 12 to 20 weeks, we got this outcome, increase in traffic or this increase in sales. So it's in that conversation, you're also demonstrating your subject matter expertise. Here's a very, a real scenario that occurred that you had been involved with. And very easily you could say, hey, this is what we did, and this is what actually happened. I've heard people sort of make up situations, and I don't think that's a good idea. If you're very new and you maybe don't have any use cases or any real world experiences, even if you've got your own blog and you're building it from scratch, you can say, hey, I built my blog from scratch. And actually, real situation on 2007. I went to YouTube. I said, how do you build a website from scratch? I found somebody who, like, step by step showed how you build a website from scratch, and I did it. So it took me like a weekend or whatever, but I did that. Then I was doing certain things. How do you do a 301 redirect? How do you grab the .http access text and actually make changes to that, upload that to the server. So you're sort of demonstrating your technical familiarity with what actually happens to happen from an SEO standpoint. You can talk about site-side optimization, what kind of content that you built, who you were trying to attract, and so you can use your own website as your use case if you don't have any real examples. It's really hard to make things up, because at the end of the day, do you really feel good about making stuff up? So you really don't want to do that. Number two, you want to be descriptive about the process. So I was just talking to you about the challenge, and all along as I'm describing to you the scenario, you start with the challenge. This was the situation. They came to us with this. The next, the process. What we did was we conducted a full technical site audit. We uncovered all of these errors. We further did some more analysis and understood that the content management system needed to be optimized. And so therefore we prioritized all of our recommendations, batched those up, and then worked directly with the development team to get those implemented in a timely manner. The outcome then was, in whatever period of time, we saw this increase in traffic, this increase in sales, blah, blah, blah. So it has these three core ingredients. You can add other stuff, but at the end of the day, case study isn't supposed to be volumes of pages. It's supposed to just be descriptive. If you want to put an image or something in there, you could, or a graph, which I think I have. Um, so having it something like this is now, if you're going to write a blog post, 620% increase in traffic in 8 months. This was a case study. This was one of my first ones, actually, when I was working in an agency. And so you could have that sit on its own, but it's best to really kind of follow it up with something a little bit more, in depth, like this, which is 620% increase in traffic, 191% increase in conversions. And what's really important to share about this, not only were these awesome results, but the one lesson, this was back in 2006, 7, and the one lesson I took away from all this was that regular and consistent implementation was really the key to that client's success. So yes, I was just dove right in and I did all those recommendations, and I built out new content for this client, and but was really key, and the client was actually ADP payroll, and they were great because they told me that they could dedicate a couple of developers. They promised that every month, I think it was like the second Tuesday of every month, they would get whatever recommendations I delivered to them from the month prior, they would implement. And so we just had this ongoing, regular and consistent, here's your recommendations. They implemented every single month. Once they did that, they were getting this awesome, traffic increase. And so, granted, that was a much different algorithm back then, but the same thing can happen today. So what happened then, there was no schema markup. There was no a lot of things back then, but what there was the basics: title tag, meta description, content that converts well, internal linking. Those were the core basic SEO recommendations that I developed. Oh, also URL strategy. There was a URL strategy involved as well. But the core components are still applicable today. So, and we didn't even do any link building. This was just pure content and site-side optimization. And so we did some technical optimization as well. But consistency is the key. And that's what I learned. And that's what you should learn as an SEO as well, is what can I take away from the work that I'm doing? Where am I seeing success, and how am I able to share that with future other clients? So here's another client. This one, again, it was 25% growth year over year, increased channel contribution from 14% to 30%. They were very heavily reliant on, their paid search. And so we flipped it. We said, you really should be focusing on organic, not your paid. So instead of spending $2 million a month on paid search, why don't you just kind of, allot some of that budget to SEO, and we can actually optimize and make your paid search even more efficient. So there was a number of learnings we got out of this, or I specifically got out of this one. And specifically, one of them was a need for a process. So I started working with this. Again, it was I took those learnings from that previous other case study. It was, we've got to implement things on a regular and consistent basis. And for this client, the takeaway was project management is key. They had an onshore and an offshore development team, and I needed to develop this system or a process so that everything was working, because there was not just this going on, this sort of tragedy that happened with this client because they had gone through a migration. They didn't think to put SEO in place. They bring me in 6-7 months later to kind of go ahead and recuperate everything that they lost. And now I'm sort of like running 15-hour days trying to fix the problem, working with the project management team, the ones onshore, and then the other opposite day was like the offshore team to make these corrections and these implementations. So the lessons that you learned, the experiences that you have from those case studies really adds up to helping you become more experienced and more of an expert from an SEO standpoint. Now, if you want to learn more and if you really want to sort of dial in your skills and become a better SEO, I've got plenty of these kinds of experiences to share with you, and process is definitely one of those. And so I want you to go to expertseomasterclass.com and get on the wait list, and I'll be happy to see you there. So if you have any questions or anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm happy to answer any questions. But we're going to get ready to launch this SEO masterclass in the next 6 weeks. So get on the wait list now, and you will be notified as soon as the doors are open. Thanks, and I'll see you Monday.